Hello, Garland Nixon here with Jamal Thomas, and we're broadcasting on both of our channels. And we'll start with the blow. We had a lot to talk about. We're going to start with the blowout in the Oval Office. Let's talk.
Yes, contract. Yes, but after that, he broke this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, GD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Did you see what problems we have?
I have been to. I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring people, you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had?
Oh, that's great.
I'm hearing the echo.
That is great.
But so let's bottom line.
Can I play a clip? Can I follow that clip up? Because as that clip goes on, Trump gets involved.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump starts to get very assertive and putting his finger in Zelensky's
So
face.
when you keep playing it, I'll keep playing it. Hold on.
I have a close-up of that if you want me to show it, if I can present. It's right here. It's about 2 minutes.
Sure.
And it goes into this kind of very close-up of these two as they're doing it. It's similar. It's pretty much the same clip.
Okay.
It's just a closer and louder. Right here. All right. This is then it starts. Trump gets involved after the fact. It's fascinating clip.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Did you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring people, you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know
bless.
that.
You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're in
dictating.
no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very
You will
good.
feel influence.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the very
bad position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From
it.
the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a
Brown,
good position.
I
You don't
was
have
in
the cards right now. With us, you start
I'm
having
not playing
cards. But
cards.
right now, you
I'm
don't. Yeah,
very
you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
What you
You're
thinking about?
gambling with
What you
World
thinking
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I'm
That's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
wearing
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you?
A lot of times.
No, in this
Even
entire
today.
meeting, you said thank
Even
you.
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for
What-
the United States
what
of
God, man, that is fascinating. Like, that is a fascinating. When, if you notice, when Trump comes in, Trump is like, look, have you, he was like, you were gambling with World War III. And then Trump gets very adamant about that point. You are gambling with World War III. And what I didn't realize the first time around, Trump points out, you have no cards, 0 cards, meaning you are losing. You have nothing that you can gamble with. What's interesting about that is that I keep saying that the negotiations that Trump, or let's say Trump and Putin are going to have, is about more than Ukraine. And that if they were only about Ukraine, the issue that they were going to run into is they've lost. Like, meaning you can't just have a conversation about a war that you've lost. You have to expand the playing field of the conversation to which you're going to have. So you're bringing in mineral rights, you're bringing in deals, you're bringing in, trade, you're bringing in what you can do in the Middle East against Muslim extremism. You're bringing in all of that stuff, with Ukraine being one chip on the table as opposed to many. If you are isolating this conversation that you're having to what is happening on the battlefield, well, that conversation has been decided on the battlefield. You've lost. Oh, that is fascinating. I love that.
And there's realities here. I understand that here's a reality. The Biden administration actually, Trump is rewriting the narrative, right?
Yep.
The narrative was the Ukraine project, the Biden administration, and long before him, they set Ukraine up to be a political and military tool to attack and weaken Russia, right? And the United States did all kinds of, if you think about it, at one point, I think it was less than 12% of Ukrainians were in favor of joining NATO. They did all kinds of chicanery. They took over the media, lies, propaganda. They abused and used Ukraine and set it up as a tool. And now it's getting bashed to pieces, right? And then when it got to the holy hell in Ukraine, Biden and his team get kicked out, and in comes the new sheriff. And the new sheriff says, you know what? The rest of that stuff didn't happen. Changed my mind. Here's the way it happened. You got in a fight with Russia, and you duped us out of our money, and we want our money back. He completely changed it. That wasn't what happened. But here's the problem. There's a term. You made a Faustian deal, bruh. You made a deal with the devil. How does it work out? They didn't read any history books of how it works out for puppets for the U.S. empire. They get a puppet, and then the puppet does whatever they want to, and then sooner or later, either they assassinate the puppet, they leave him at his own people, hang him. Henry Kissinger told you how this ends. So you become a puppet, and now you're surprised. Now you're like, hey. Sure, fair enough. It's happened to all other U.S. puppets before, but I thought this one was going to be different. It's like a guy goes in and he says, "Oh, that's a nice girl. I think I'll ask her for a date." And some guy goes, "Dude, the last guy she dated, she killed him and she collected insurance policy. Oh, by the way, what about the guy before that? She killed him and collected an insurance policy. What about the guy before that? He fell off a cliff and she collected.
Right, that was an accident. That was an accident.
Supposedly. So here's the deal, dude. If I were you, I wouldn't date her. I think it'll work out this time. Dude, you're a dead man. She's a black widow. She's going to, first day one, she's going to say, let's get married. She's going to sign $1 million and then invite you to go skydiving, and your backpack ain't going to have a parachute in it. Okay, come on. So this guy accepts that you know what U.S. imperialism does. And now when the inevitable comes home, the chickens finally, this bastard has stolen hundreds of millions of dollars. He's stolen all kinds of money. He thought he was going to get his out of it. He's going to get his money. And he's thrown people to the front to be murdered. He's overthrown, shut down churches. Any evil deed that they ask him to do, he was willing to do it to get his money. I don't feel sorry for him. This is the way it ends up for U.S. puppets.
I don't feel sorry for Zelensky in the least at all. I mean, as I have pointed out before, from my point of view, leaders have a philosophical, legal, ethical responsibility to the people of the country to which they lead. And if you are going to take a position based upon, outside people who want to take advantage of your country and use it as a bulwark to go against Russia, that's on you. That's on you. I mean, if you think about you're talking about 500,000-600,000 Ukrainians dead.
A million. I've heard 1 million. I've heard, and think about this. Let's say there's 500,000 to 1 million dead. That means there's 2 or 3 million maimed, legs torn off, arms blinded, burned beyond recognition. You got people stumbling around, a generation wiped out or horrifyingly abused, maimed for life.
Yep. And
Thanks
now
to
they're
this
talking
guy.
about let's bring in our kids. Let's get 18-year-olds into the fight. Now let's get them into the fight. Just outrageous. I mean, this is like an intervention. Well, give me your take on this. What do you think? Like, is it that he thinks that litigating this in public is somehow to his benefit? Because as I watched it, I kept thinking to myself, what is the point of this? Like, do you really believe, like, if you and I are having a conversation, and I know that the conversation is on air, I may be different on air than I am off air, especially if I have something that I'm trying to accomplish and I'm trying to make an argument for the larger public, because I think the larger public would agree with me, even if I know I can't influence you. Do you think that he went there with this mistaken conception that the American public was A, going to like him, and B, was going to agree with something that he was saying? There's a part in this conversation in one of the clips where Trump says, I let this play on longer because I think it's important for the American public to see what I'm dealing with. That statement is mind-blowing, because that means that Donald Trump is aware this looks bad for him. This looks horrible for him. And so I'm going to let this play out because this looks so bad for him. Do you think Zelensky has this misconception that he can do this with the idea that somebody in America is going to somehow agree with him, and that he has some kind of influence in the country that is somehow being litigated in this moment? Because I don't think that's the case. He looks horrible in this. Trump looks infinitely rational in this. He does.
Yeah, I know. You know what I think it is? I think it's just a matter of a stunning level of incompetence. Zelensky's a guy. I mean, he's wandering around in a janitor's uniform, a green janitor's uniform. All he needs is a little thing right here that says, "Hi, my name is Zelensky." Right? You know what I mean? Right. How may I help you? My name is Zelensky, or something on there. He's wandering around. He does not understand the dynamics of power he's dealing with. He is not in a position to hold that. He's come to the Oval Office. I know right now, if they sent me to the Kremlin, I wouldn't disrespect Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin. If you sent me to the White House or the Oval Office, I'd shake the president's hand, thank you, sir, and I'd leave, whether I liked him or not. Biden, I hated this, but I would know, hey, there's a certain protocol. I'm in the White House. This is the president of the United States. He's a genocidal bastard, and I hate Joe Biden. But yes, sir, and I would be respectful, and I would leave. He doesn't understand the dynamics of power that he's in, as well as you and I do, and we're just friggin' YouTube hosts. Yeah, but we understand the dynamics of power. If they said, look, Jamal, tomorrow you're going to go to the White House, president wants to talk to you, you'd wear a suit and tie.
I wear a suit. It's the White House.
I'd go get a haircut. I'd make sure I shaved. I'd get a suit and tie. I'd make sure, I wash my face and I put some lotion on my hands so they're not ashy. I'm going to look respectable. And I'm going to walk in, yes, sir, Mr. President, blah, blah, blah. I understand. This guy, if you look at one point, Trump and what's his name, and Vance are talking, and he won't shut up.
Yeah.
He won't shut up. They're like, and he's like, blah, 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 blah. He keeps trying. And I'm like, no, this is not what you really need to be doing right now. You're making it worse, dude. Yeah. Shut up. You're making it worse. And you look at his face, he's like, oh shit, this is a mess. Oh, what do I do? Oh my, look at it. I was just like, I got the video playing, and every time I see him, he's like this. Oh shit. It's like, oh shit. What the you know what I mean?
So bad.
I felt sorry for the dude. I felt sorry for him. I'm like, oh.
I didn't feel sorry for Zelensky. I thought this is an intervention that Zelensky needs. I thought that he is in a fantasy land. Not only are you not showing respect, you're doing so to somebody that gave you $300 billion. Can we put that in context? Right? Like, you are beseeching Trump for more money, more military aid, more military assistance after he has already given you all of this money. And you can't even wear a suit. You get one of the reporters asked them, do you own a suit? And Zelensky's like, yes. He mumbles it through, and they start laughing at him when he's answering the question, effectively putting on the spot. Dude, you look like a janitor. Where's your mop? Where's your broom?
To the White House, man. Don't you understand? You don't come in. Nobody comes in here without a suit unless they got some cleaning things, some cleaning stuff in there.
By the way,
after hours, they come in without a suit because they're clean. They keep the place nice and dusty.
Also, the belief that you're going to Bigfoot the president in the Oval Office is nonsense. No president would tolerate that. As weak and frail as Joe Biden was, I don't believe for a moment that Joe Biden would accept a tongue lashing in the Oval Office? Who like, are you really going to take trash in your own house with the American public that voted you a few weeks ago in the office watching? Are you really going to accept? Meaning, there's no situation that Donald Trump could accept Zelensky acting this way in the Oval Office. None. And this is happening in the context of Zelensky begging for more money. It's like, how are you being disrespectful and begging for money simultaneously? How are you doing both? Usually you would shut the hell up and close your mouth. He is functioning under a series of delusions. One of which is that somehow you're going to get the public to agree with you. Okay, that's a non-starter. They voted in Trump. Part of the reason they voted in Trump, the war was litigated in the election, and the American public chose contrary. 2, he didn't even sign the honeypot deal, the mineral deal. I call it a honeypot deal. The reason I call it a honeypot deal is because the entire point of that deal is to get the U.S. entangled into Ukraine under this idea of, okay, well, you have 50% of our resources, and so now you have to defend those resources, whether you give us security guarantees or not. Zelensky didn't even sign that deal. That deal was screwing over Ukraine, yes, but at the very least, Ukraine could have later said Zelensky is not really the leader, so we're not going to accept the deal. Yeah. And the third part, Trump is petty. Trump is petty.
Of course.
And I suspect after this meeting, what Trump is going to say is no more military assistance. Let them figure this shit out.
Oh, the Starlink, I think it's done. I think Starlink, when the sun goes down, when it rises tomorrow, there won't be any Starlink satellites for them. Yeah, of course he is. But, I mean, the bottom line is what we're looking at here is this is in a way, I can put this is the imperial decline of the United States. We're looking at with this shit show one after another. I mean, as I said, the big part of it is this, and you got to take this into account. They set this thing up by saying we're going to this empire, and everybody knows it was a Ukraine project. It was a United States project. They overthrew the government. They put in their puppets. Then they started extracting money. Hunter Biden and all these people, they're extracting money out of the stealing, robbing the place blind. They're setting him up, these poor bastards up for war. Yeah, we got you covered. We're going to support you forever as long as it takes fighting Russia. They give them military uniforms. They give them, we'll set you up to fight this monstrous bear. Yeah, there's a bear right there. We're going to throw you in the cage with a bear. And they're like, yeah, throw us in a cage with that bear. And we got your back. All right. Right. So this all happens. I mean, you have to take into context, that there was this clear project. They armed them. The U.S. has paid for everything. We paid their salaries. We paid Zelensky's salaries. We paid for electricity, everything to keep this project going. And just like that, January 20th, Donald Trump comes in and says, all of that never happened.
We're done.
What happened was, and he's got a new story. I don't think that's the way it happened. He says, you played Joe Biden like a fiddle.
Yep.
That ain't what happened. and Zelensky, here's the beauty of it. Zelensky can't say that. He can't, because he's in league with the devil filling his pockets. Zelensky can't tell the truth. He can't say, nah, that ain't what really happened. They really set us up, me up as a puppet, and they set us up against. He can't say that. And let me ask you this. Here's the question.
Takes my agency.
For you. Macron and Starver come crawling in, doing the old green eggs and ham thing with Trump, right? Hey, we're going to send troops. Will you send troops to Ukraine? No. Will you send them in a bus? No. You know what I mean? Will you send them in a train? No. Will you send them in a plane? No. I will not send troops to Ukraine. I will not send them in a train. I will not send them in a plane. I will not send troops. They're doing green eggs and ham. And then next comes Starmer. All right, do you have something to say? Will you send them in a car? No. Will you send them on a bar? No. No troops to Ukraine. So they come in and they beg Trump, and Trump says no troops, no Americans, no backstops, nothing for Ukraine. So that all falls apart. And then what happens? And then Trump says, I don't want to meet with Zelensky. And like the geniuses they are, they're like, you got to meet with Zelensky.
Yeah, right.
I bet they're thinking to themselves, in hindsight, perhaps we should have listened to Trump and told them not to meet with Zelensky. Here's my question. What position does that put Starmer and these other idiots who have thrown all of their support behind him? What position are they in now?
They're in the same position that they was before this meeting took place. They were never part of the negotiations. Like if you watch the Starmer thing, there's this great point where Starmer is using this kind of nuanced, insidious language of we back each other, we're allies, we're closer than blah, blah, blah. And Trump turns to him and says, hey, you can fight the Russians by yourself, right? And everybody in the room laughs. Everybody in the room laughs. Starmer so leaves his body in that moment, and everybody laughs. Donald Trump used British weakness as a punchline. Think of how damaging this is, right? I've been binging Marvin Gaye's, what is the name of that song? To Keep You Satisfied.
Uh-huh.
And there's a part of that song where he says something like, I could not bear the mental strain, and can you understand how much pain I'm in this moment? I love that take, right? Like he's like, I'm showing you how much pain I'm in this moment. It is humiliating for the Brits who have this arrogance going with this idea of the British Empire to get joked by the American president about how weak they are in relation to the Russians. And for America to use it as a punchline, as he effectively tells Starmer, no, we're not getting involved. Do it on your own. If you're going to do this, do it on your own. If you want to fight the Russians, God bless. We're not touching it. And to make it clear, there was another part in the meeting where Starmer says something to the effect of, well, we're going to negotiate this thing. No, you're not. You're not part of the negotiations. You are in the room with Kellogg as he babysits you while the adults, Putin and Trump, negotiate a deal which will be given to the UK and which Europe would accept, and their tails will wag in the way that Putin said their tails will wag. They were never part of the negotiation. That's what I'm saying. This doesn't put them into any position because they were already at the kids' table. That's my take. I mean, it looks bad for Zelensky, but they got nothing out of them coming here, short of just humiliation. At least Macron, at least, could talk to Trump. Starmer was humiliated. Like, when I say humiliated, I mean humiliated. Either at the press briefing, either in the Oval Office, Trump kept hitting Starmer. It's like he just didn't like him. Also, one last point. Lammy is the chubby black guy that's on the British team. If you remember, Lammy trashed Trump on, I believe, Twitter. Oh, he said this is, we shouldn't have him coming into the country. He's an embarrassment. He's a humiliation. Lammy was in the Oval Office with Keir Starmer. And so I strongly suspect that part of the reason that Trump was trashing Starmer in that meeting is part of the fact that he knows that these are the same people that were working against them in one sense. And two, they have had big mouths without any capability of doing anything about the fact on the ground, despite their big mouths. So for my take, they were not in the mix in the first place. They were not going to be part of the negotiations in the first place. They left without getting anything in return. Zelensky made an ass of himself. And if there is a difference, it's that Trump is probably going to be more petty. No, we're pulling out. We don't want to have anything to do with it. We're leaving it. Figure it out on your own. As you pointed out, the Starlink went down. Oh, how did that happen? Who knew? No weapons came this week. That sounds pretty bad. Sucks for all of you. Europe, I guess we'll have to pick up with it. He may get very petty. If there's any difference, that difference may be we're out faster. We care less, even less than we did before. Like it becomes that, right? But I guess my point is Europe was always sidelined already.
Yeah, this is the worst possible thing that could have happened to Zelensky and the Europeans, and this is the best possible thing. This was the greatest gift to Trump as it is, because now, his entire MAGA world are all going to turn on how bad they hate Zelensky. They despise Zelensky. I already saw where David Frum and some of these idiots, well, there you go. That's the embodiment of the Trump-Russia collusion. And I'm like, really? That's the best they can do.
Your take?
Their take is, Trump-Russia collusion. Everything with them is Trump-Russia collusion. If it rains, there you go. There's proof. That's about all the proof they've ever had of Trump-Russia collusion.
By the way, Trump answered that in this press conference because somebody said, aren't you working with Putin or something like that? And Trump is like, what is wrong with you? I'm working for America. Like, I am taking a policy that is explicitly in America's best interest. You stupid idiots are living in a fantasy land. They have lost. And it's almost like they can't accept the fact that they've lost. And it's that part to me. And that part to me is the wildest part. They are getting crushed on the battlefield. All of these people who are screaming and holding Ukraine flags are like, oh my God, I can't believe Donald Trump is doing this. It's like, but you've lost 20% of your territory. You've lost 500,000 people. Hundreds of thousands have been broken. Arms missing, legs missing. As you pointed out, the flower of their generation is gone. You are literally trying to put 18-year-olds into the battlefield to go and fight and die. And you are complaining to the guy who's saying, let's end it. And you're claiming that the guy who's saying, let's end this, because they are going to collapse at some point. Russia will take more at some point. Let's end it now, when you have, at the very least, a bargaining chip and you have your military still on the ground engaged. And these stupid idiots are like, I can't believe that Donald Trump is trying to end the war. How is that to the betterment of Ukraine? That's what they need to explain to me. How are these liberals who are full bore into this idea that more Ukrainians need to die because we need to stick to the Russians? How the hell is that in the best interest of a broken, beaten country like Ukraine? Just astonishing to me. Those people are insects. I swear.
You notice it's a total inability. The problem is they've got so much emotionally and politically invested in Ukraine. Like, for instance,
yes,
just like Starmer. How does Starmer wake up one day after he said to the British people, you've got to suffer for Ukraine, when they look at what UK was before the Ukraine conflict started, and now it's a godforsaken hellhole. It's a disaster. And all throughout Europe, the poverty, the prices have gone through the roof. And it was all, we've got to do this for Ukraine. We've got to do that. And one day, and here's the problem. Because, why do we have to do this, Keir Starmer and Macron and Schultz? Because if you don't, the Russians are going to come over the trenches and attack us all. If we don't suffer like this, the Russians are coming in, and they're not going to stop at Ukraine. They'll keep coming. It's Poland, it's the Baltics. They'll just keep coming. You get a deal, and the Russians ain't coming. And the war stops. And they're like, well, when are the Russians coming? You told us if the war stopped, the Russians were coming. The Russians ain't coming, are they? Perhaps we've been had.
And a better question,
lied to.
What was it for?
That's it.
What was it for?
That's the obvious question. If you told us we had to suffer to stop the Russians from killing us all, and we suffered, and the Russians ain't going to kill us all, they're just back there minding their own business, doing Russian things. Like exactly what you said. Then why did we do this? And all of the people that were like, hello, you remember us? We're the crazy conspiracy theorists. We're the Russian bots that were fired from our jobs for being Russian bots and conspiracy theorists, that were thrown off Twitter and demonetized off YouTube. Remember us? Do you remember we told you at the beginning what this was about? Do you remember the term Ukraine project? So not only do they have to face their people, and say, it looks like we did kind of lie to you. They got to face all of us, the people in the chat, they got to even face them, right? Everybody who said, you're being lied to, guys. This is just the Ukraine project to go after Russia. Can they afford that? Well, you know what? People will be out for blood. People be saying, well, these people have got to be prosecuted. We need to do an inquiry into everybody that told us that. We need to look into the media. What were all these lies about? There could be ramifications in Europe.
They're going to be electoral ramifications, I mean, that's it. Like 3 years ago, those governments are going to collapse. And if you think about it, look at the German government. That government collapsed. And the new administration that came in. But if you look at the Alternative for Deutschland, AFD, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They're number 2 spot. This is considered a Nazi party. That, the idea that party is anywhere close to power is shocking. They're number 2. If you look at France, Marine Le Pen's party, they have to take this extraordinary maneuvers just to keep Le Pen's party from out of power. Like, even if you're looking at Austria, the far right party was able to take power. Maloney, meaning in the European parliamentary elections, there was a shift. European Parliament just ignored the shift, but it's there. And those people are angry. I mean, the businesses are closing. If you're talking about Germany, German industry collapsing. And to make it even worse, the money that Europe has been putting into the war, a lot of that money has been coming to the U.S. The extra money that Europe is spending on oil, they've been paying 5 times more from the U.S. When they destroyed the pipelines, okay, where are they getting the oil from? They're still getting it from Russia, but now they have to get it from a third buyer for 5 times more. All of this stuff is gutting Europe. They're making people's lives more miserable. And again, when I asked the question, it may be impolite. What was it for? You took all of this hardship and loss. And Trump comes in and is like, all right, we're rewriting this. It was not unprovoked. It was provoked. We are not going to do a ceasefire that is going to, resume in 6 months. It has to be a deal. It has to be an ironclad deal. You're not going to be part of the table because you had 3 years and you didn't do anything. So the adults are now in, and we will negotiate this with Russia. Like, that is mind blowing. And then to add to it, we need 50% of your mineral wealth. Like, to add that to, like, for insult to injury, to even add that part to it after the fact. The question of what was it for is damning, because it's like you did all of this to lose, and then you didn't even have a good reason to do it, and you've damaged the European populations in the process of doing it. What was it for? Like somebody has to answer that, and they're not going to like the answer. They're not going to like the answer.
And how about this? And if you're honest about this, I don't care whether you like Trump or don't like Trump. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. In the process of this, they got involved in American politics. Now, we can argue, we can go way back and say, yes, the Americans have gotten involved with European politics and have dominated European politics and all that kind of stuff, and have, did terrible things. I agree with that. But on top of all of that, they decided in 2024 that they were going to go with Kamala Harris, a person with the IQ of a bag of ice. And she was losing in every swing state. And some genius decided, I think she's got a chance. You know what I mean? It's like, even if you were going to, let's just say, for the sake of argument, you said, I'm going to get involved in U.S. politics. You're Keir Starmer. Let's go over there and help a candidate win. Okay, fair enough. I might not agree with it, but that's what you decide. But if you look over there and one candidate is losing in the polls in every swing state, it's probably not a good idea to choose that candidate to climb on board. You know what I mean? You probably, because the odds are overwhelming that candidate's going to lose. We can talk about the right or wrongness of doing it. Just from a practical perspective, if they're like, Garland, go help this candidate, I'm like, well, that candidate's losing in every swing state. And if that candidate loses, the other candidate that wins is going to know that I tried to help them. Probably not going to work out well. They're going to want some get backs.
Yep.
So they chose a person who, like, most people looked at it and said, yeah, she's probably going to lose. The polls said she's going to lose. Everything around said she's going to lose. And these idiots chose her. And then when she lost, they're like, oh, shit, how do we deal with Trump now? And I'm like, there's no good guys here, man. Yeah. And the hopefully, maybe the people of Europe will wake up and say, we need to go in another direction. These people are freaking idiots. But we just sit here. Sometimes, after I watched this, I was just like, what am I looking at? It's just like a surreal, like a stunning level when you watch politics, particularly for you and I.
Yeah.
When we told the truth and we literally got fired and our whole job was closed down. And to sit there and look at it now and say, man, things sure have taken a 360-degree turn, as Annalena Baerbock would say.
God, she's so attractive. I know every time I say God, every time her name comes up, I say that. She is loony as a fruitcake, but Lord knows she's attractive. It is a weird feeling to lose your job for doing the right thing, meaning on the right side of the street. It is doubly weird for 3 months later for a new administration to come in and change all of it overnight. Like the entire narrative, the entire story, the entire point of view, all of it changed. It is a very bizarre feeling. It is very surreal. And as you point out, watching that, it's super surreal. They don't like Zelensky. Zelensky is frustrated. You can see it on his face. You can hear the exasperation in Trump, where Trump's like, I just want this shit over with. I just want this over with. Dude, I just want this over with. You're in my way. I just want this over with.
Yes.
And Vance, who has been a critic of the Ukraine thing for a while now, basically finally being able to be face to face with Zelensky and point out to him, dude, you are dragging people off the street. Do you get that? Like, do you get the gravity of that? You are literally, I've seen videos where they push the guy off the bike and then drag him into a van to take him away. Like stuff like this, taking people out of nightclubs, dancers, haberdashers, barbers, snatching people off the street, going to get groceries. That's what they've been doing to try to beef up their manpower because they're that short of men. Remember, Ukraine started this with a 3-to-1 manpower advantage. People may forget that today, but when Russia went in, they only went in with 150,000 people. Ukraine had like 1 million man military. Russia is sitting now with like 1 million man military. Ukraine is barely is getting dog catchers and hat makers and dancers to be thrown onto the front lines to get killed by the Russians to save time. It's not even that they believe that they're going to make advances. It's just hold the ground, just hold ground, just try not to die and hold ground. That's where they are. And so it's a bit rich that Zelensky is sitting here acting like we need to keep fighting. Are you serious right now? Oh, I love that Vance is like, they're getting exasperated with him, which I kind of like.
And the other part is back in Ukraine. I mean, the Ukrainians, the Ukrainiacs, I forgot, is that Caleb often calls them. These people they're not rational. You've got these, neo-Nazis and these other people there. And but even them have to be looking at Zelensky, knowing they know what they got. But even they have to be looking at it saying, this is not going to work out well for us. You know what I mean? I mean, we're going to keep on fighting. You got to be looking at it saying, yeah, they're going to cut off Starlink. And we know, how long do you fight knowing there are no more weapons coming from the U.S. and the Europeans are like, okay, we'll get some money together. Okay, fair enough. What are you going to buy with it? But let's say they had $1 trillion right now. Let's say they had $10 trillion, right? It's like if you and I are, it's an almost unimaginable amount of money. If you and I were on a desert island and I had a chest full of money and you had a bottle of water, I don't care how much money's in that. I need to give it to you to share that bottle of water with me or I'm going to die. Right. Yeah. Like, well, yeah. And you're like, I got 2 gallons of water and we've heard from a rescue ship. It's going to be here in 5 days. That's enough for us to both live. And I say, how much is the water? And you say, how much you got in that chunk? Oh, $10 million. I'll give you half of this water for 10 million. Or you can just keep it. And I'll get it after you and your skeleton will be laying. You know what I mean? Right. Money is only as good as what you can buy with it. Right. And so the problem they have in Europe is, let's say they finally decide we're going to take the Russians 300 billion and we'll use that, right? But they have nothing to buy. The U.S. is like, we're just about out of stuff, man. We can't import our coffers anymore. They don't have any more. So even they can't buy stuff because it's not being made. It's not physically present in this universe. Right. So they're getting to a position where they're like, we must keep on fighting. You're not having any weapons. And now it's going to get worse because you're not going to have any support from the United States. And what happens when they can only talk within these local platoons. But if they try to use radios to talk back to headquarters, they might as well text Moscow because all that stuff's going to be intercepted immediately. It's not encrypted. Come on. They might as well call the Russians. All right, we're all moving to the left now. You might want to sight the artillery in.
And by the way, Trump may not sell them the weapons. Even if they did have the money, Trump might be like, I said I want to end the war. You're not getting weapons from us. Then what? He did not put himself in a good spot. What do you think Trump does now?
Oh, I think he's pissed.
Yeah, me too.
And I think he just told us in a way, he's like, I wanted everybody to see what we're up against. I wanted everybody to see that. I've started reading things pop up that says, effective immediately, the State Department's no longer going to do this, this, and this. You're going to see, he's probably going to send his henchman, J.D. Vance, go forth and do my evil works, right? He's going to go, call everybody, the whole cabinet together. Anybody that's given anything to Ukraine, I don't care if you're sending them marshmallows to roast on the fire, that shit stops. If there's a plane en route, tell them to do a U-turn and come back. Anything going to Ukraine stops immediately. Yeah. And if it's already on the ground, load it back and bring it back.
Right, climb
Nothing's
back.
going. Trump.
Climb
is-
back.
I think that's what happens, don't you?
If that guy's eating a sandwich, take it from
Yeah,
him.
that's it.
Don't give him anything. Oh man, yeah. Like I said, he's petty. He's petty. He is petty. And by the way, a different angle than Joe Biden. Like Joe Biden is looking at. I used to tell people when they said Joe Biden was out of his mind. I said, yes, he's out of his mind, but he has a point of view, and that point of view is in this kind of global chessboard that he wants to keep going in. Trump doesn't care about Ukraine. This is not his bag. It's not. It's the thing he wants to get rid of. He doesn't have the same commitments in the way that Joe Biden had to it, and not just not have the same commitments. The American public told him to stop the war. So he is representing 320 million people in a country that gave him billions of dollars and continues to give them weapons. And the catch becomes, okay, what happens when those weapons stop? And like Trump said, I've entitled you to be a tough guy. You believe that you're tough because America is backing you. And I think it's a psychoanalyze Trump for a bit. He seemed to like power and people who are strong and people
Yes, he
who
does.
can affect that strength. And so looking at the world and you're looking at, okay, who's the military powers? Okay, you have China, Russia, the US. You may add Turkey as a regional power. You may add Iran as a regional power, etc. But from the standpoint of Putin, Xi Jinping, etc., I suspect there's a level of respect from the standpoint of strength that they exude. I don't think he feels that way about Europe.
No.
And I think in Europe, you have a bunch of chihuahuas who have no military power in real terms. You might be able to knock over an African dictatorship or whatever, but in real power terms, you're irrelevant to the contest. And yet they're the loudest voices in the room. Like, meaning the people who have the ability to do the least are screaming the loudest for action. And it's like, okay, but you're only screaming that way because the US is backing you. That's why you turn to Starmer and say, you can fight the Russians on your own, right? You're being this loud. You're being this brave. If you remember when Russia dropped their Rezhnev and the world was like, oh my God. Like the world was just like, oh my God. What the fuck is that? Like it was like stunning weapon. Like it is a terrifying weapon. It wasn't even a nuclear weapon. It was just terrifying. And Starmer comes out and is like, we're willing to stand against the Russians. And they ask them, hey, they're talking about nukes, right? Are you really willing to get into a nuclear war with Russia over this? And Starmer is still like, we will stand against the Russians. Okay, if you're Trump and you're listening to that, and these idiots are talking about a third world war, and they in no way can fight the Russians on their own, as Trump elucidated in that meeting when he humiliated Starmer. Can you really have respect for people like that? Like, it's the guy standing behind his brother screaming that he's going to kick your ass, and yet cannot do it on his own. And so it's like all of these people are coming in meetings with Trump, effectively beating their chest and simultaneously begging Trump to back him in a war that will end up being a third world war. It's just amazing.
Let me get your thoughts on this. Here, speaking of tough people, he used callous blast Trump, right? So she's out there in an interview with the media Axios on Thursday. She said it had been uncomfortable to hear Trump and other senior U.S. officials repeating Russian narratives and talking points. The statements made towards us are quite strong. The statements regarding Russia are very friendly. Here's the change. She claims that if Russia is allowed back around the international table like nothing has happened, more armed conflicts will follow, and not only in Europe. So, I mean, these people are not rational. Again, well, if here's the thing, if Russia wins in Ukraine, which undoubtedly now we know they will win in Ukraine, well, then there'll be other armed conflicts around the world. Where? Right. What is Russia going to go to? I don't know, attack Iceland or something? Or they just, hey, we won here. What are you going to do? I don't know. I'm thinking maybe somewhere in the Himalaya mountains. Like any countries there? We'll attack. There's going to be it's like irrational things. If Russia wins, there'll be other armed conflicts around the world. How do you justify that statement? You're repeating Russian talking points and narratives. What does that even mean? So we got this lady who has that Nazi Ursula, look at that look. Isn't that Ursula von der Leyen's look right there?
Yeah.
This stone cold, hard Nazi Russian hating look. It's a look that just says, yeah, I hate the Russians for no reason other than because they're Russians and I'm a racist bastard. That's what that look says to me. And then you just keep saying stupid things. If the Russians win, we'll never have summer again.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
food won't
Roses
taste
will
the
never
same.
grow.
Yeah,
Right.
what do you think of
Potatoes.
this? Like, and she's from what, Estonia?
Estonia. Yeah,
Estonia's
Estonia.
like the size of I don't know, a
It's not.
medium-sized
It's like Rhode
neighborhood.
Island. It may be Rhode Island at the at maybe Rhode Island. I don't even know if it's that big.
It's like a borough in Moscow, 1.4 million people.
Yeah,
But they put like the entire EU. I could understand if it was somebody from Germany or France or one of these major, Italy maybe. But you take somebody from Estonia, some deranged lunatic from this postage stamp size country who just hates the Russians because it's Friday and you got to hate Russians on Friday. She's a maniac. And
right.
that's, you put people like that out front and you're supposed to be credible. And then she uses words like Russian narratives, which mean nothing.
Yep. Either the statement is true or false. Like, just because Hitler likes dogs, I like dogs, doesn't mean I like Hitler. Like, it's a stupid refrain when I hear that. And that's the way liberals have started to talk, though, which means they have no argument in this stuff. You're right. Like, what war is she referring to? Like, what is the war that she believes that's going to take place when Ukraine war ends? What war? And she, whether she realizes it or not, she's living in fantasy land, because if they get what they wanted and Russia continues, they will get to the border of Poland and Poland will shit a brick when they do. Meaning, if Russia subsumes all of Ukraine and they push it to the border where they just take it all, and Poland is going to lose its mind. Europe is going to lose its mind. So it's like Trump is like, dude, get a deal. You're better off with a deal as opposed to just kind of letting this play out for God knows how long, where unpredictable things can take place in the context of the war. I have no idea what she's talking about. And by the way, that's the one that Marco Rubio refused to meet with, where apparently Marco Rubio canceled the meeting. He was like, why am I having this conversation? This woman is a lunatic. And he didn't show up. He canceled his meeting with her. She was supposed to be coming to the US to have a conversation. And Rubio's like, dude, I don't have the time for this. And I suppose that after Rubio watched this meeting, he's like, whew, I dodged a bullet on that one. I didn't want to have to talk to that lunatic, this deranged goofball, coming from this tiny country, beating her chest about how strong she is, the mighty Estonia and the mighty Estonian army, an ironic term in terms. Yeah, she's a nuts. She's a lunatic. She's attractive, but she's a lunatic.
And here we go.
I need to stop saying that. I'm being misogynistic. I'm sorry.
No, you're not. I mean, hey, it is what it is. Crap, they won't let me get it. Won't let me see this. I'm trying to get. No, I don't want an MSNBC app.
Yeah, I hate that
anyway,
stuff. There's no button or link. There may be something at the top of the page where you can click to get rid of it.
Trump and Vance berate Zelensky, Ukraine Zelensky, right? And they're going on.
Screaming headlines. Screaming
They're
headlines.
angry.
Oh, talk to Zelensky like that.
And they just talk about it. The trouble was that he killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. He said, what does that sense? It's a war. He killed our people. Okay, yeah, that's a war. I can give you with that. He didn't exchange prisoners. That's bullcrap. I don't know how many prisoners exchanges that I've seen. What kind of diplomacy are you speaking about? What do you mean? Well, wait a minute. You're not making sense. He didn't exchange prisoners. How many prisoner exchanges have you had? I've personally seen them.
There was one, like a week ago?
There was one where they shot down the plane of their own prisoners.
Yes. And there was one like a week ago, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but that was a recent one. I don't know what he's talking about with the exchange of prisoners and stuff. And none of these papers point out that, the Minsk agreements 1 and 2, none of them point out the Istanbul agreements. They don't point out that Russia attended to the agreements. Europe and Ukraine did not. They don't point out the overthrow of the government in 2014. Meaning all of these things are pebbles leading to chaos and catastrophe that they leave out constantly in the way that they frame this. So it's like, if you see two people fighting, one guy beats the hell out of the other guy, you may feel sorry for the guy that lost until you realize, oh, the guy was a pedophile. The guy raped this kid or something insane, right? Where you're like, oh, okay, fair enough. That ass kicking was deserved. I don't entirely feel that way about Ukraine. I mean, because the reality of it is the public of Ukraine picked Zelensky because, oddly enough, that deranged degenerate was a peace candidate. It was a switching bait. They voted, say, okay, this guy's going to avoid a war, and that was the goofball that got them into a war. Just outrageous.
You know what's interesting? So this is the MSNBC, right? What MSNBC, what the Democratic Party, which is the Democratic Party outlet, this is what they stand for. The Democratic Party outlet. Former Republican Liz Cheney of Wyoming, generations of American patriots from Revolution onward have fought for the principles of Zelensky is risking his life to defend. Nazis? I thought we fought against the principles that he's, quote, risking his life to defend, right? Then they go on. Now listen to this. Former White House National Security Advisor John Bolton, who served at Trump, said, they're drinking vodka straight out of the bottle in the Kremlin tonight. It was a great day for Moscow. That is why the Democratic Party is sidelined. You know what I mean? They're no longer credible actors. So this happens, and the best you can do is put Liz Cheney, who lost in a blowout in the Republican Party, and then wandered around with Kamala, who then lost in a blowout. John Bolton, who wrote a recommendation for Kamala to be elected when she lost in a blowout. And then instead of having an intellectually sound conversation, well, what do you think it means? Well, let's talk about foreign policy and who said blah, blah, blah. No, he says they're drinking vodka straight out of the bottle in the Kremlin. It was a great day for Moscow. They give you this absurd anti-Russian rhetoric that in no way addresses what happened. Yeah. Why do I give a shit what they're drinking in Moscow? You know what that is? You're saying things that Vladimir Putin would like. These are things. This is the rhetoric that the Putin would love. He says, history will remember, where did we go? Donald Trump and J.D. Vance attacked Zelensky and pressured him to surrender the freedom of his people, the country that they overthrew, to the KGB war criminal who invaded Ukraine. So they're still living in this world where Zelensky, the bullshit world that they made up about Ukraine being a free country who was fighting against a crazy man. That's all they got. And they lost in a blowout. And it still hasn't gotten through their dense little skulls that thing that they were trying to do has been thoroughly defeated and the game is over.
They're also lying. That's that part. As you point out, how is it a democracy when you eliminate opposition political parties, when you get rid of opposition media? How is it a democracy under those terms? How is it a democracy when the actual democracy under Yanukovych was overthrown in 2014? How on earth is this a democracy? Also, it's a bit rich to me that lunatic John Bolton is still giving political discourse. John Bolton was a lunatic even in the Bush administration. And the fact that liberals now like John Bolton is weird. It's weird. It's strange. Or even liking Liz Cheney. I mean, Keith Olbermann used to give hate screeds on his show on MSNBC against George Bush, John Boltons of the world, the Dick Cheneys of the world. And now, somewhere along the way, they're like, hey, those wars, those are actually good. And we don't like Trump. So if Trump is trying to end the war, then, we don't like that. So we need to find the most neocon, deranged lunatics, the most sociopaths of the sociopath scale to come and give commentary on MSNBC liberal. That is outrageous. That is outrageous. I mean, A, they're lying. B, they're getting it so it is so dishonest in its framing that it is epic on some level. Just pathetic.
Now we look at the Washington Post. We look around a little bit. Tears and shock in Ukraine and Europe.
Screaming headlines. I expected the screaming headlines. Those are the best.
Right. I'm just crying because of what I hear, a Ukrainian lawmaker said. Just the word, wow. We still have a lot of work to be done. Better war than shame. I love this. Better war than shameful peace. You're going to lose.
What does that even mean? What does that even mean? And the Washington Post wrote a story like that too, where they were saying in the opinion section, it may be better for Ukraine to lose on the battlefield than to have a peace deal. And you're like, but both of those things end up in the same place. The only difference is in one, you save lives. And the other one, you let Russia take it all. Meaning the moment that the Ukrainian military collapses, Russia gets whatever it wants. whatever it wants and however it wants it. Your ability to go to negotiations is over. Your ability to have a take goes out the window. So this idea of, hey, we should just fight until everybody dies in the military. How is that a take? Like, how is that a real take? I don't get that. And as Trump is trying to explain to him, Trump is effectively saying, I am trying to save what's left of your country. That's what he's saying. They may disagree with that. It may not be coming from a place, of love for Ukraine, but ultimately, I am trying to save the rest of your country. You have no cards in this negotiation because you lost on the battlefield. We need to accept that as reality. You lost. And because you lost, any negotiation that takes place in the context of the war is a pointless endeavor for you because you have no cards on the table to play. If we expand negotiations to other things, with Ukraine being one of those things, then at that point, because we've expanded the space to which we can negotiate and talk, there are other things that we can add to this that can be in your betterment, as opposed to where you are now, where you have nothing to gain on your own. And Zelensky, being the incompetent troglodyte that he is, doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. He is in a fantasy land. These people are delusional.
It's absolutely crazy to watch. And, over the weekend, we'll see different people talk about it. It's going to be interesting to hear what Alexander McCurry says.
Yes. He's so good. He's so good.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he has to say in various people. But, you got to look at it. Now, I don't think it's not going to be a matter of what's said. I think one of the things that I took out of there is Trump making a point that I wanted everybody to see this. And I think that there's something behind that. Because what's behind that is, put the whole week together. Macron, Starmer, you guys got nothing. Kind of like, you want to fight the Russians, you got nothing. At one point, I think Starmer said something like was talking about what, the Russians are going to have to make concessions and give up territory. And Trump said, good, you try and take it from them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're so badass, they got to take territory. Yeah, good luck. You go take it from them.
I got the clip where Trump pointed out, I think it's good for the American public to see this, just so the audience can see it for themselves. Because you're right. He is effectively saying, this looks so bad for you that it only helps my case to the American public.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I tell you.
Say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on out here. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying. You're
again,
running low on soldiers.
Listen,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I wanted this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a
with
ceasefire
guarantees.
because you'll get a ceasefire faster than it agrees. It's going to be a very hard thing to do.
That is fascinating. God, I love that clip. This is a businessman. I was with my doctor once, and I had a transplant. And I remember I was sitting in the car, like, all right, even if I need to be irradiated, I am willing to fight tooth and nail to keep this transplant. I go in and the doctor's like, all right, this has failed. There's nothing we can do with this. I understand what you want. What you want is not acceptable in regards to realistic reality terms. It's that. It's this honest, brutal, scathing assessment because you are not getting the gist of what is being said in a normal fashion. Trump is telling him, look, man, you're losing your people. Your people are dying. Your military is broken. You are out of cash, out of money. You have nothing. You have no cards to play in this. Zero. And you are sitting here saying that you don't want a ceasefire. How are both of these things living simultaneously? Meaning, how is it that you have fundamentally lost on a massive effing level, and yet you want to keep fighting? and you have no cards to play in this fight. Meaning, if I stop giving you weapons, you stop having weapons. If I stop giving you money to keep the lights on, your lights are no longer on. If I stop giving you money for the energy grid, you no longer have an energy grid. You have nothing in this. How are you sitting here making this argument to me that you want to keep going and that we should somehow continue to back you in a losing cause? Like, that is a fascinating, scathing intervention. And to add to it, I'm glad the American public is watching this. They need to see this. Oh, this is,
Think about the
it's
whole
so
week
surreal.
here. For the whole week, this is what Trump has done. He's
Yeah.
like, Starmer, yes, the Russians are going to have to give up ground. And Trump's like, well, you try taking it from them,
Yeah,
pal.
you do it.
You got so much yap. You
Yeah.
got nothing. Macron, oh, yes, we're going to do this and we'll send in 20,000 troops. And Trump was like, dude, that's not going to happen. That's crazy. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Zelensky comes in. I don't want peace. We want this and that. Trump's like, dude. He says, you're buried. Your people, you're losing people. He says, you're buried, right? And it's like the whole week, one after the other, a lunatic comes into the office and says, we want to do this. And Trump says, you got nothing. You can't win the fight. Next guy. All right, we're standing up to the Russians. How about that? And Trump's like, you're asking me to stand up to the Russians. You ain't standing up to the Russians.
Yep.
You have nothing to stand up with. Next guy comes in is Zelensky. Hey, we can't just let the Russians get away. He's like, you're losing the war. What are you? And it's like, can you imagine, not to defend him, but can you imagine the frustration of the Trump people week after week, having one idiot after the other marching in this dream world where they can still fight the Russians? And Trump's just like, you've lost the war. You got nothing. You're asking me to support you. I wasn't even in office. It wasn't my war, and I don't want it.
Yep.
I don't want it. I wasn't here. I don't want this. I want to get out of this. I got plans for my presidency, and they don't involve nuclear annihilation.
Right.
So the answer is no. And they're like, okay, well, we'll send Zelensky in next, and he'll ask you the same stupid damn question and get the same answer, because for some reason it doesn't seem to get through any of their heads.
Yeah, it's a parade of goofballs coming in, asking them to continue something that Trump has already said he's going to end it. It's like they're having this passage to Mecca to kiss Trump's hand and beg him to keep the war going. And he keeps he has to be frustrated. And you can hear the exasperation on him when he's talking to the press, where he's like, dude, all of these people are getting killed. What's wrong with you people? It's like, am I the only sane person in this room? Why are you people like this? It's fascinating. It is fascinating. It is surreal. It is very surreal.
Yeah. I just wonder, when he gets back to Kiev, if the people there see him as a liability, if they think, well, Trump's pissed at him, so we're in trouble and they're shutting everything down. But perhaps if he wasn't in the way, we could renegotiate with Trump. I mean, he don't have to be scared of Trump. I think he has to be scared of the people back home who may just say, he's too much of a liability now. And now that he's a liability, because they're very dangerous people. They threatened him before. And we'll see if he survives the weekend. That's the question. I don't even know if he's going to survive the weekend, because he's got to go home. And this is crazy. I guess we'll have to talk again early in the week and figure out what the heck. Aren't the Europeans supposed to be having a meeting on Sunday? I think
that's a good question.
Like Macron and Starmer and those guys are supposed to be getting together to have a meeting about this on I'd like to be a fly on the wall in that meeting.
So they're having another emergency conference.
I think so, but they're not rational. You know what I mean? I don't even think they'll address this. They'll just say, yes, poor Vladimir Zelensky, you were mistreated by Trump, and he's probably a puppet of Putin. Now let's get back to our plan to defeat the Russians. Because they're not rational.
I get the sense that Europeans are living in history. They're living in a time capsule. Like, they still think of themselves as, well, we're colonizers. We went into Africa. We went into South America. We colonized these countries. We are better. We're superior. We're this, we're that. And being put to the kids' table is a blow to the ego in a way that I don't think they've ever experienced before. Like, meaning on the world political stage, they've been sidelined. And an enemy that they've defined that doesn't need to be an enemy, but is an enemy in the way they've made them, Russia, is now working with America, who used to be their big brother, and are working with them to try to normalize relationship between the two. And then the catch becomes, okay, well, Europe whipped itself up into a war footing. It allowed its industries to be destroyed. It allowed all of this money to be drained out. And now America is saying, okay, we're done. We're finished with this. We're putting our toys back and we're going back to normal. And Europe is like, Yeah, but we damaged ourselves for you. And more to the point, how are you sidelining us in any of these conversations? Like, I feel like it has to be a blow to the ego to have Kellogg point out, I'm babysitting Europe because they're going to bitch and moan, and they need somebody to bitch and moan to. And so my job is to sit here and listen to them do the bitching and moaning while Trump and Putin figure out how the world is divvied up. Yeah, I can imagine that's a blow to the ego to colonizers and people who think of themselves as superior.
You know, you make a good point here, and it's something I thought about recently, and that is, look, England and France were these gigantic worldwide empires. Africa, the Caribbean, and then Asian islands, and all this stuff. Remember French Indochina, all this. So they were these. So, and over the course of time, they've kind of shrunk, right? But they attached themselves to the U.S. empire, so they could still fool themselves. This has been going on for centuries. They've been empires for centuries, so they could still say, you know, we're somewhat of an empire because we still got the U.S. and we're attached to it. And for the first time in a bunch of centuries, the Brits got to say, oh, crap, we're just a little island on the other side of the channel. We're poor. Now we have all the accoutrements of an empire. We've got Buckingham Palace. We've got the guards with the fuzzy hats, changing of the guards. We got a king walking around with stolen diamonds and a crown. We got everything that looks like an empire, but we're just a poor little island on the other side of the channel. After hundreds of years, the sun never sets on the British crown, all this stuff. And today, effective January 20th, 2025, no, you're not. You're not an empire anymore. You're just a little impoverished
after
island.
the Second World War, First World War, Britain owned 51% of the globe. 51% of the globe. And fast forward, 50 years later, a little island, a tiny little island that can't even say that they're associated with the European Union. And when the U.S. signs a trade deal with them, they will be raped in that trade deal because they are just a little island dealing with a country of 320 million people. This is a wake-up call for Europe.
With the militarily effectively, like as frightful as a band of soccer hooligans from after an Arsenal game that had too much ale. You know, that's it. They got soccer hooligans. They don't even have a military. That's the best they can attack Russia. What are you going to do? Oh, a bunch of British soccer hooligans turned over a wastebasket in Lower Moscow. I'm support. The Russians would just send the local police. In fact, if the Brits attacked the Russians, they'd send the local police to arrest them. They wouldn't even have to send the Russian army to get them. They just send the local constables to lock them up. It's pathetic. They're pathetic. Well, thanks a lot. I get ready to run on that one. I think it's time for us to move on.
Man, that is
everybody. Don't forget, this is on both Jamal Thomas's channel and mine. So if you're watching it right now on Jamal's channel and you're not a member of my channel, come over and subscribe to my channel. If you're watching on mine and you're not on Jamal's, go subscribe to Jamal's. He has a great show every morning. I'm on it every week from between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. He's got lots of really great guests. I mean, it's a fantastic show. So if you're not doing anything from 7 to 10, I like every morning when I get up, I plop it on. I'm stumbling, you're stumbling around in the morning trying to get my act together. But I have my little Bluetooth speaker and I hit that, and he's always got great guests. So Jamal's channel is Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. He's got his show. And then if you miss it, a lot of times he runs stuff all other parts of the day. So it's a great channel. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Make sure that you're crossed.
Both,
subscribe to both channels.
That's right.
Follow me also on Rockfin. Follow me also on Rumble. And of course, I got Patreon. I got PayPal, buy me a coffee and stuff like that to donate to the channel. How can they donate to your channel, Jamal?
Oh, same. PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat. In fact, just to give a heads up to two, Winston Fahrenheit. Bro, Trump just shafted Zelensky. Yes, he did. I mean, that trade deal was going to be a shafting anyway, but yeah, he got reamed. And Sean, Marcus, my two political analysts in the house. Look, I will tell you, Garland, my channel loves you.
Man.
Every time you come on, they are just through the moon. And I think the last video got like 10,000 views with you on it. They love you to death. In fact, they were like, you guys should do a show together. You guys should do a show together. And
we got to do more stuff together. We got to do more stuff together, though.
When we were on the radio station, I actually pushed to get you back on Frontlines.
That would have been fun, man. We'd have had a
Yeah.
blast. We'd have
He
had
wouldn't
a
do it.
blast.
He wouldn't do it. He was like, he's doing great with Wilmer.
Yeah, our
Um,
show, but your show was great and our show was great. And I think he was just like, I don't want to mess up. The vibe going here is good.
Yeah,
The vibe
yeah.
going there is, I can understand that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But who
But it did
knows? We
push.
got our fingers crossed, man. I hope, I hope Sputnik opens back up. I have a positive feeling that maybe it will, but
I hope
anything
they
could
do.
happen.
Oh, I hope they do. That first show is going to be insane.
Woo!
Oh, breathing fire and chest thumping. I'm back, bitch. Oh, that show's going to be insane. That show is going to be insane. They're going to have to reel me in on that show. I'm going to
Yeah.
get unhinged. Angry, bitter,
Yeah.
political, like all of it. Like just a bristled old man coming back to his post. Yeah, we'll see. From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah, we
By
will see.
the
All
way,
right.
I'm keeping my show either way, though. I'm not giving up
Oh, yeah.
the show again.
Yeah.
I hate that because I think to myself, over the course of those 5 years, as opposed to coming back where you're building from, I don't know, 30K.
Yes.
That would have been, at 100K, even just by little incremental growth over the course of those 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I kick myself for it.
I started when the SMO started. I really started doing my show and it grew.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. Boy, I should have 500,000 followers. I mean, I am so subscribed, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
still, even in spite of YouTube, scratched out about 70-some thousand followers. So even though they're going to screw you over, you're still going to do okay, and people are going to see it, and you're going to get around there. So it's but yeah, I know, like I said, keep going this time, and you'll keep rolling. And all right, well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, but go on,
We're
man.
gonna get running. All
Thanks,
right,
brother.
and I got to get ready and. Well, I got to do a radio show at 6 p.m. in
Be
DC. And
be safe. You
oh,
have a
I'm
good one.
tired. All right, we'll talk soon. All right, thanks
Have
a
a
lot,
good one, man.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
We're out.